when you think about that's what the hell you get for recording at 5:30 in the damn morning, isn't it? Holy hell Christ. Let's rewind, try that again. One of the great stories of the 2017 NFL season had to have been the Los Angeles Rams. You've got the young quarterback, you've got the young guru, the future of the league head coach, and they go on this nice run, win their division, make it to the playoffs. Early playoff exit, sure, but lots of goodwill and feelings for a Rams team that had just moved to Los Angeles, trying to establish themselves back again in a familiar, if long ago, marketplace. It was a great season for them. And I wanted to see what this organization was going to do to try and follow up on the success of 2017 and still ultimately the disappointment. Well, it was clear, I think, to everyone very early on that this Rams team was all in for 2018. And you can understand it. You're coming off a division title, early playoff exit, but a division title at a time where your division is in a lot of flux and transition. With the Seahawks, you felt, the Cardinals and the 49ers. Like, you feel like you could be the established alpha dogs there in your division. So you're not as worried about trying to win the division as you are trying to go for the bigger goals, trying to win the ultimate prize. And when you have a young head coach like Sean McVay, you have confidence that he could be the type of guy that can help lead you to the promised land. And it certainly helps when you have a young quarterback like Jared Goff, who played well in his second season, once he got away from the stink of Jeff Fisher. You've got him on a rookie deal that allows you a lot of salary cap space, a lot of salary cap savings that you can invest in other places in the organization. And the Rams, following up the work that they did in the offseason heading into 2017, bringing in guys like Andrew Whitworth and bringing in guys like Robert Woods, followed that up, and they were even more active and more aggressive in this past offseason. The trade for Brandon Cooks, giving up a first-round pick to get him, trading for Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters, giving Ndamukong Suh a one-year, $14 million contract. And then eventually the re-signings of Todd Gurley and, mercifully, thankfully, Aaron Donald as well. It was clear that this team was doing big things with the intent of going all in this year. If you want to know what going all in looks like, this is what going all in looks like. You give up a first-round pick for Brandon Cooks. You give away other draft picks for guys like Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters. You sign Ndamukong Suh. You give Todd Gurley big-time money. You give Aaron Donald even bigger big-time money. Then during the season, you trade for a guy like Dante Fowler. The Rams were all in, and frankly, as you should be, especially when you've got that young quarterback on a rookie deal. It affords you a lot of versatility and flexibility in terms of the salary cap, and you want to take advantage of that opportunity that you've given yourself. You want to be able to pounce and strike while the iron is hot. And that's what the Rams set out to do. And obviously, early on in the season, it paid dividends as they started off 8-0. You had the loss in New Orleans at week number 9, but you can live with that. Another elite team in the conference. You're on the road. They still have to put up over 40 points to beat you. You get it. Like, that's okay. But you were looking at the Rams heading into the last month of the season. They're sitting there at 11-1. They're trying to bang it out to get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Then came that Chicago game in Week 14 where they go into Soldier Field on Sunday night and the Bears dominated them. Goff was terrible. Gurley couldn't get anything going. And the Bears' defense was all over that Rams offense. I mean, they smacked them in the mouth and they did everything to them. And for a Rams team that was riding really high at that point in time, they had a lot of momentum. To me, that Chicago loss changed some things for them. Then they follow that up the next week by losing to the Eagles. And you're starting to have some concerns about them. Sure, they won their last couple of games against, the 49ers and the Cardinals. So they were still able to get into the playoffs at 13-3. But they didn't quite feel the same. They didn't. And granted, they were able to get into the divisional round. They beat the Cowboys, hold on there. Then go on the road in the NFC Championship game. They get revenge on the Saints. You want to talk about help from the refs or not, doesn't matter. The bottom line is they won the fucking game and they made it to the Super Bowl. But I still point back to that Chicago game on Sunday night. And if anything else, that showed the formula for success to beating that team. If you can run the ball, you can smack him in the mouth offensively, and you can get after Jared Goff and get him off his spot defensively, this team, the Rams, would be in some trouble. And we ultimately, saw that play out in the Super Bowl. Like, for all the talk about Sean McVay being the wonder kid when it comes to NFL offensive philosophy, and all these teams sitting there be like, oh, my God, you once shook hands with Sean McVay. You're a head coach in the league now. Oh, my God, he once broke wind in your general direction. You are clearly qualified to lead our fucking organization as our head football coach. That's the ridiculousness and stupidity to what we've gotten here. The NFL is so unoriginal that when one team does something and it works to a certain degree, everybody else tries to get on board and copy it. Instead of trying to figure out the next thing to do, they all try to mirror and match what is going on current state. And you have teams like the Bears who mirrored it and had some success with it, granted. But you have other teams that are going to make mistakes in terms of their coaching decisions based off of the fact that they want their next Sean McVay. But then when you look at the Super Bowl and you saw what happened with Sean McVay and his play calling, he coached like he was scared. He coached like he was intimidated. I know there was a big deal made about McVay and his kind of ball washing of Belichick when they had their interactions at the Super Bowl. And I get it. There was nothing wrong with it fundamentally. You know, there was a respect element there that Belichick has merited and most certainly earned and deserved. And there's nothing wrong with expressing that. That said, though, when you follow that up with the offensive game plan that you had or didn't have, because I still don't know what the fuck the Rams were really trying to do offensively. I don't know what their game plan was. I don't know what their strategy really was. That's not a good look. And Jared Goff was god-awful in the Super Bowl. He was just bad. I wouldn't say he was Rex Grossman bad, but it's one of the worst performances by a quarterback that I've ever seen in the Super Bowl. He almost looked Tony Eason level scared. And it was not the 85 Bears defense that he was facing off against. It was the 2018 New England Patriots. But you could see the impact of not having Todd Gurley in there. Clearly, there was something wrong with him late in the year, both injury and maybe something else, because you would think, especially once you get to the Super Bowl, and great story with C.J. Anderson being signed late in the year, kind of being an afterthought and coming in and really helping to save the Rams season in a lot of ways when Gurley did go down with injury and wasn't up to snuff and wasn't up to speed. You're in the Super Bowl. This is what you went all in for all year, and now you're barely going to use a guy like Gurley in the first half? I just don't get it. I don't know what the fuck Sean McVay was trying to do on offense. I don't know why the hell he put Jared Goff in such a bad position. I still can't for the life of me figure out why Jared Goff was just so god-awful and bad in that game. It was absolutely bad. So the Rams went all in. They got close, but close only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and atom bombs. Doesn't count here. You don't get a consolation trophy. Just a Super Bowl loss. So you look at this team now, all the big moves they made on defense. You've got Aaron Donald, 20.5 sacks, and your defense is still middle of the road. It's crazy, though. Statistically, they were middle of the road, and at times really bad. With all the big names you bring in, like Sue and Talib and Peters, Dante Fowler in trade. You've got the best defensive player arguably in the league in Aaron Donald. 20.5 sacks as an interior lineman. That's ridiculously crazy, spectacular. You're still middle of the road statistically, and like I said, sometimes bad. But when you get to the Super Bowl, it was like Wade Phillips was comfortable. Wade Phillips knew what the hell he was doing. Wade Phillips called one of the best defensive games I've ever seen him call, and he's called a lot of good ones over the years as a coordinator. Because as bad as the Rams were on offense, the Patriots were just as bad through 3+ quarters. They really were. Or pretty close to it, at least. It was crazy how that worked out. The defense that had underperformed all year overperformed in the Super Bowl, and the offense that had performed up to expectations pretty much all year significantly underperformed when the team needed them the most. But what's crazy about it is the Rams don't have to be done. Yes, they went all in for 2018, but they've still got like $35 million in salary cap space. You've got some notable free agents like Dante Fowler and Ndamukong Suh, LaMarcus Joyner, Roger Saffold, C.J. Anderson, if you want to throw him into the mix. But with $35 million in cap space, you can get creative and potentially re-sign all of those guys and maybe still have enough flexibility to go get one more name or maybe two mid-level type of guys in free agency. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you feel like you've got enough in the mix. You look at this team, though, again, it's really hard to go back to the Super Bowl as the loser of the previous one. Outside of this year's Patriots, who did it and then won this year's Super Bowl, what do you have to go back to the Bills of the 90s to find a team that did that? So the headwinds of history are clearly blowing in the face of the Los Angeles Rams here, but anything is possible. But they've got to still get better, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I would expect the majority of their draft to be spent on the defensive side, where you could say, as a team that won your conference, made it to the Super Bowl, you could draft best player available. That certainly is true. But you must come out of this draft with better talent at inside linebacker. You need better talent on the edge as a pass rusher, and you need some help in that secondary. You would think for a team that has LaMarcus Joyner, that has Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters, that their secondary would be better, but at times their secondary absolutely sucked. If they can get maybe two guys in the draft that can come in and contribute right away on defense, this Rams team defense could be better in 2019. This team could be right back in the mix. But you do have to wonder if a little bit of the luster and shine is worn off of the star of Sean McVay just a little bit, and as a consequence, Jared Goff. And these guys are going to be a little shell-shocked going into this upcoming season based off of what happened in the Super Bowl. I think it is a fair and interesting question, and obviously based off of precedent in history, it is more likely than not that the Rams will not be back in the Super Bowl next year than they will be.